Hi, welcome to the Lisa Saunders Show. Today's program is going to be very interesting, and I think you're going to really appreciate the information she's going to give us because it's something that I think about and many Americans think about. In fact, Donna Anderson, who is my guest here today. Donna, welcome.
Thank you for having me back here, Lisa. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, you have so much information to keep us healthy in all ways. Donna Anderson is the founder and director of Encore Fitness and Wellness. She is a medical exercise specialist and gerontologist with over 30 years of experience in the field of wellness and fitness. Donna, you told me that you'd be willing to talk about Alzheimer's today, and
Yes.
I was really excited about it. You gave me several topics we could discuss, and Alzheimer's, I thought, I've got to talk about that. And when I told you, weren't surprised that I wanted to talk about that because you read a study. Isn't that what Americans fear most?
Yeah, there was a study done in 2012, and it was done in the United States. There were actually studies done in Britain as well. And what it shows is Americans and British people, Alzheimer's is the most feared disease. It outranks cancer, diabetes, excuse me, heart disease. It's the #1 fear that people have as they go through their lifespan.
Well, I believe it because it's one thing we talk about in our family because I've had ancestors that had difficulty.
Right.
So what can you tell us? You said that you had information on how to prevent or delay Alzheimer's, and you said that Alzheimer's, you can't even prove somebody has Alzheimer's until they're dead, and
That's
it's in the
correct.
autopsy.
That's correct.
So please just tell us about Alzheimer's.
Well, I'm going to tell you about dementia first, Lisa,
Okay.
if that's okay. Because,
Yeah, please.
really, when someone presents with those symptoms, we really should be calling it dementia. For the most part, doctors will distinguish certain behaviors to have more Alzheimer characters. But to be honest with you, we really don't know whether a subject has Alzheimer's till after and they have their brain autopsied. So, and the reason being is that in an Alzheimer's brain, we see plaques and tangles. And I'll talk a little bit more about what presents. There's several proteins that produce these plaques and tangles, and that's kind of a hallmark of an Alzheimer's brain. But there's other types of dementia. For example, Alzheimer's, if you look at the different data, they say anywhere from 50 to 70% of all dementias will be Alzheimer's dementia. Mm-hmm. If we look at another one is vascular dementia. So vascular dementia is caused by a stiffening and narrowing of the arteries throughout the body, and especially as they go to the brain. And that accounts for about 20% of all dementias.
That was a lot. You know, when you were telling me about that, you know, that was a surprise. So you said there are ways of delaying it or preventing it. How do you want to go about this? So
what I'm going to just talk about is the current things that are done typically for patients that present with dementia these days. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that, about what doctors have in their tool arsenal, so to speak. And then I'd like to talk a little bit more about studies that have gone on, some in this country, but some also in other countries that have supported that there are interventions that can be done that will delay or onset.
Okay, so go
and
ahead,
other dementias. So let's talk a little bit about the current approach. So currently, when someone presents, by the way, there's about 10 different things that people, if it happens to them, they could go, I might be coming down with dementia. Mm-hmm. So if you go on to alzheimers.org, you can see the whole list there. Mm-hmm. It could be something like you take your keys and you put them in the refrigerator. Mm-hmm. And now if you did it once, maybe you're just distracted and something's going on in your life, but if you repeatedly do that, that's one of the signs. Mm-hmm. Another sign would be losing time or place. In other words, you'd wake up in the morning and you think it's 6 o'clock at night, and it gets a very repetitive thing. So if you look, there's 10 little things that would say, well, these are hallmarks of dementia. Mm-hmm. So if you go to a doctor, he's going to do several tests on you. One of them is called a mini mental state examination. Mm-hmm. So they do this exam on you, and basically they can use that and say, yeah, we do think you have, and they can categorize it. You have mild cognitive impairment, or you're actually in a state of dementia. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, the doctor has a choice to make. He can initiate medications. So currently there's 5 drugs available for doctors to use. The last one that was just approved in 2014 is actually a combination drug, so it is not a new drug. So there have been no new drugs since 2003. So just think about that amount of time. Over 10 years have passed, no new drug has come to market. And the current arsenal they have, actually, it controls more symptoms. It doesn't really dramatically slow the progression of the disease. It's more symptomatic. It's, for some people, they say it delays it, but Alzheimer's and other dementias, currently, there's no cure.
Okay.
So why is that important? Well, it's important because several things. There are some trials going on right now. They're in phase 3, which is great. And these drugs do show promise, which is great. However, they're predicting it's going to take another 10 years before any of them come to market. So what are we going to do in this 10-year interval? Well, let's look at the data that supports that there are interventions that we can use just with ourselves to delay or slow the progression of dementia. And these involve exercise, diet.
Oh, it's always exercise and
Yeah,
diet.
I know,
There's no
I know.
free
Well,
ride.
You know, for me, I jump up and down and go, yippee, it's exercise.
Right, 'cause that's your business.
Yeah. And I
Okay,
love
diet,
exercise.
exercise,
Yeah,
and
diet, exercise, social interactions,
social interaction.
and some cognitive change. So a lot of people, luminosity might be something that people out there are familiar with. They've seen it on their web, banner and stuff like that. And you go on and you take these tests, and they get progressively harder. So it's almost like doing a crossword.
I've never heard of, oh, it's like a puzzle or a game?
It could be a puzzle. It's all different things. If you go on, there's many, many different things. Some things are word, some are spatial. So there's many different.
Is there a website that you go?
Luminosity.com.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
you go on there and you do those little mental exercises.
Yeah, and there's like a monthly fee. You can try it free for a month. And, some people feel like, well, this is good. I'm learning new things all the time, and it's getting it harder. They make it harder and harder. And so we don't have definitive proof that this offers opportunity to everybody. I personally believe, looking at the data, that I don't think it's one thing by itself. I think we have to look at it as a multi-component program.
Okay, so what about
adapting our life?
So what about the diet or?
Okay, well, so let's go into some detail about exercise.
Okay.
The data that we've seen so far supports that, again, perhaps not just aerobic exercise is important, especially for vascular dementia, because when we look at vascular dementia, as people get older, they have a stiffening of the arteries, but then if you have blockage and things like that, it makes it that much worse. So let's face it, aerobic exercise, if someone starts even in midlife, even late in life, it can definitely
So what is the
diminish.
definition of aerobic exercise?
Aerobic exercise is exercise that raises your heart rate to, let's put it, at mild levels, 40 to 65% of your VO2 max. So what a VO2 max, I don't want to get too technical here, I'm sorry, but just to go into a little detail, that's how your body uses oxygen to do exercise.
Okay.
So, another day I'll bring a heart rate chart and I'll show you everything. But let's take me for an example, okay? So I'm 60, right? So if I get the numbers, if I take 40% of my max heart rate, if I did it properly, it would be 220 minus 60, so that's 160, right? Times 60. So that's 96, okay? So 96 would be the lowest level of my heart rate for me to get aerobic.
And you have to have, how long does you have to be exercising like that?
That's, there's a lot of different things out there. Recent data has said that you can take a 30-minute session, split it in 10-minute sessions, and still get the same benefit. I prefer that people actually try to go for 30 minutes.
Now, this is something you do in your practice with
Correct.
people. Okay,
Yes.
so you would be figuring it out if they were
doing
their...
I actually do VO2 max measurements on clients when they come to my
Okay, so they can
practice.
know that they're doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
I actually determine what their VO2 max is submaximally, and then I can tell them, I really want you to exercise within this range. And eventually they learn perceived exertion. So initially we would measure, we can use the treadmill, we can use a heart rate monitor, we can measure that heart rate. But in time, they're going to know by their breathing how hard they're working.
Should they be doing this every day or X number of
We
times
say
a
like
week?
3 to 5 times a week.
Okay, so
And-
if you have a bad day where you just want to lay in bed all day watching I Love Lucy reruns, you're allowed one or two
You're
of those.
entitled. If you have a reason you need to do that, you should do it. But talking about exercise a little bit more, as important as aerobic exercise is, a lot of the studies show it's actually more beneficial if they have aerobic exercise plus strength training, which could be just body weight strength training like squats and lunges,
Okay.
flexibility exercises, and one thing that hasn't been looked at, but I'm going to go out there on a limb and say, if they tested it, I think it would show efficacy, would be balance training. Because balance is a component that diminishes through the lifespan. In other words, as we get older, we lose that ability to stay in balance, to stay in proprioception. And that uses a part of the brain that, if stimulated, I do think it would be very efficacious to ward
And
off
that's
dementia.
something you do in your practice as
Yeah,
well?
all the
Well,
time.
what does that mean? Somebody's walking across a balance beam? Or what does that mean,
No,
balance?
it could be something as simple as holding on to the back of a chair and bringing your body forward, bringing one leg back, and then letting your arms go. So,
Okay.
you know, that's
So
one
it's
pose.
simple, easy things that you would have these at home.
You could just stand yourself and put your feet in a tandem position. So in other words, toe to heel, and just try to stay there for 10 seconds. And I can guarantee you, many people
That's
cannot
hard.
do that. Yeah,
That is hard.
and that's just training your body for balance. Yep.
Okay.
So that's one thing
interesting.
about how exercise could be
And you
one of the
said
components.
flexibility. Is that just doing little exercises?
Flexibility
to
is
just
stretching.
keep
You know, flexibility is stretching.
So,
Yep.
so you really should be doing all those things to protect your brain.
That's true. It's very true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, you know, the exercise portion. We could go into a little more detail on
Now,
that.
on your website, do you have samples? You said on your website you can upload a lot of this information on dementia.
Right.
So you'll show sample exercises?
yeah, you
or
know, Well, you know, I will show it up as much as I will explain what each exercise is.
what,
so, and I'll say
what
what's
kind
aerobic,
is?
what's-
Okay, so
yeah,
you'll explain at least
Sure.
what the okay.
definitely. And I have YouTube videos, so people are welcome to go to YouTube. You simply put my name, Encore Fitness, and certain videos will pop up.
And then nutrition. What did you say about
So let's talk
diet?
about diet. So the other thing they've discovered about dementia, and particularly Alzheimer's, is they do believe there's an inflammatory component to it. And they also believe it has some relation to insulin resistance, which is about type 2 diabetes. Now, I'm not saying, actually type 2 diabetes is a risk factor for dementia, and specifically for Alzheimer's. So they've, you know, done the research and showed that there is a correlation there. So what can we eat food-wise that is anti-inflammatory? Well, that's easy. We should eat foods that have antioxidant qualities. So things like blueberries, strawberries, sweet potatoes, pretty much any vegetable that's got a lot of color is going to have antioxidant qualities, which is going to be very helpful to your body. It cleans up the free radicals from your blood. And it's just, and you know, if you want to make it really easy, Mediterranean diet, which people could just go in and Google and say, oh, that's what I should be eating.
What
So
is
olive
it?
oil. Well, it's a balanced diet, you know, that does have fat, it has protein, it has carbohydrates, it's got everything going for it. And it's, you know, whole grain based, fish based, less meat, smaller quantities of meat.
When you mean meat, do you mean
I mean beef and pork,
and,
things.
what's poultry then? What would
Well,
you-
that's a white meat, and I would say that's probably not as, you know, I think fish is the gold standard for protein, but there's nothing wrong with turkey or chicken or anything like that. I'm not saying you can never have red meat at
Right,
all.
right, 'cause
I'm
you
just saying
wanna-
to limit
Yeah, okay.
and to focus on whole grain foods. So, you know, white sugar, white bread, all that stuff, I'm not saying it's bad. I don't believe in bad food, good food, but I do believe we should go towards a diet that does emphasize more whole foods.
Because sugar and white flour would that be considered
If
foods
they
that
don't
cause
have-
inflammation?
I wouldn't, you know, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that I think too much sugar probably does cause inflammation. But I won't go on a limb and say, you know, as a scientist, I'm not going to say they don't directly cause inflammation. I just think we need to go to foods that reduce inflammation.
Right, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
There's kind of a difference.
Yeah, there is a
in how
difference.
you're
I can't
saying
get
it.
causation,
Right.
you know, but I will say we do have definitive proof that when you go to a diet that's got whole grains, fruits and vegetables and fish and little meat, it's
Now,
helpful.
you've given me a lot of other helpful tips, like on your last show. You said you're going to write a book. Are you going to put a lot of your advice for the poor people that don't live near you over here?
I think the book that's kind of coming to mind right now is actually, it is going to put all this together. So it's
Okay.
going to be a program, and I'm calling it the Legacy Project. And the reason why I'm calling it that is that I feel I've been given a gift as a person, as a child of parents who really took good care of their health. My dad, he died a year and a half ago. He was almost 97 years old. And he wasn't a health nut by any means, but he made an exercise part of every day. Not, he went on and used the treadmill, a bicycle. He would go out and garden. I mean, it was just part of his day. And he was very careful with the way he ate. He was very careful with his whole demeanor. So, and I think that has a big effect too. I'll go into that a little bit more because I want to talk about this thing called the Nun study in a minute. And we'll offer us some insights as to why this is not a hard thing. This is something we could all do to change the legacy for our children. Right, because a lot of
times we all want to get thin to fit into that perfect bathing suit, but honestly, I think I'd be even more motivated if I could keep my marbles about me as I get older.
Well, and because that's the legacy project, because this is a legacy for us to leave to our children. Not just the memories, but the financial legacy as well, because I'm just going to share some numbers, very quickly with you. So currently we have 153 billion people with Alzheimer's disease, okay? And it will grow in 2050 to 765 billion people. Currently we're spending 153 billion, that's Medicare and Medicaid, for Alzheimer's in 2015. This will grow, those are the same numbers, 700, that wasn't the people, I'm sorry. So it's going to multiply by a factor of about 5. So right now, nearly 1 in 5 Medicare dollars, 18%, is spent on someone with Alzheimer's. And in 2050, nearly 1 in 3 dollars will be spent on Alzheimer's. So this is a call to action.
Right.
And the reason why I'm saying we need to do this is they're already doing it in other countries.
And what are they doing in other countries?
So I'll talk about 2 studies. So there's one called the Finger Study, and it was done in Finland. It was a large study, and they had 2 groups. So they had one group that was an intervention group, and then they had the control. So they didn't tell them to change anything. For the intervention group, they controlled several things. They had them do aerobic exercise, strength training, and flexibility training. They didn't do balance work as far as I know. So they had a schedule for that. They did switch them to a Mediterranean diet. They did do some lifestyle modifications with them. In other words, if they found that they were stressed, they introduced stress reduction for them. So they did some lifestyle modifications. They found in 2 years, they used cognitive tests to test the efficacy of the program. They had a 25% improvement in cognitive ability.
25%?
In 2 years.
Wow.
Impressive.
Yes.
Yeah, impressive. And this has been presented, all over the world and even in the United States, and yet there's virtually been no press about it. And I just recently watched last week a half-day seminar, or I don't know what to call it. It's a White House conference on aging, and they had this advisory board, and it was supposed to be about prevention and care of Alzheimer's. And I watched it, and it was really all about care. There was almost
nothing on prevention.
No, nothing on prevention. It was really disappointing to me to see that.
So maybe you are the person, the pioneer, that has to get out there with your book and your videos and this program you want to put together. Are you allowed to run a study yourself?
It would be very difficult to do because I think you have to almost be part of a big institution to do that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing a grassroots effort.
Right.
It's like if I got a group of people and they were like, yes, I want to do this program, I would say, let's get together, let's do this together, let's form a community and show we can document us versus the normal population. Now, people would say, well, that can't be peer reviewed or anything like that because you didn't go through all the protocols.
Right.
Who knows? You could get the best people that come in. So in other words, these are people that are already dedicated to fitness and nutrition. So that kind of skews your results.
So if nothing else, you could at least start a club. Maybe do you have a club where if this is you're determined?
Well, I think, I'm setting something on my website, and I think my goal would be if anyone wants to be part of the Legacy Project, I would like them to reach out to me and say, yeah, I want to be part of this, and I want to organize workshops, and maybe we'll just get together the first month, once a week, to establish that community, and then make sure that everyone's got like a buddy. So in either words, they come in with a friend so they can partner with them, or they meet someone there that they can partner, because the partnering is very important.
Right, to keep accountable to each other.
It's even more than that. All these studies have shown that community involvement, civic engagement, feeling a connection. So let me go into a little bit why we think that that's so important. So let's talk about the nun study. So the nun study started in 1991, and it stopped, I believe, in 2002. So it went, for almost 20 years. So that's a long time, right? So David Snowden was the investigator, and he studied a group of almost 700 nuns who were the Sisters of Notre Dame, and they were in Minnesota. And they, for the most part, were all of German ancestry. So very interesting, and they transitioned to this country in the early 1900s. And so let's face it, a very homogeneous population, right? Some of them had different socioeconomic backgrounds. In other words, some of the women, when they joined the sisterhood, came from more well-off backgrounds, and some sisters came from poorer circumstances. Some were more educated, some of them had PhDs, some of them only had grade school education. So he studied them for these 20 years, and the wonderful thing about this, these sisters were very generous with everything. So they let him come in and observe them, number one. So he observed behaviors, managed that, observed it and recorded it. They also took cognitive tests for that whole period of time, 20 years. And by the way, the oldest sister lived to 107.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing, totally amazing. So, and she was fully cognitive. She was so with it that when she was 107, she told another sister, "You need to call my family because I'm dying." And 45 minutes later, she was dead.
Wow.
Who doesn't want to go that way? Who? My hands up.
Well, I want to just die peacefully where I don't know, but anyway.
But she was.
I guess she wanted a deathbed scene,
well,
right?
she was happy about it because she was going where she
Right.
knew it was a better place. Yeah.
Right.
But it was just a wonderful, wonderful story. He tells many stories in his book called The Nun Study.
Okay.
So, but the point being, these sisters ate the same food, pretty much
each other.
As each other, because they
Right,
eat
'cause-
communally,
right,
obviously.
right.
So they had it's great because it reduced a lot of when we do
Variables
studies, the variables. Yeah,
Right.
so it controlled that. But there were sisters that exercised more, that were more active, and I talked about the educational component. And then some sisters came from higher socioeconomic standard. The whole study revealed that several things. Number one, education is protective to the brain. So
Is it?
Yes,
Why do you think that is?
because it's
Because it's something
stimulating
you got,
neurons.
Because it's something you got in your late teens, early 20s, or do you think if you have an education, now you know how to find out more information?
I think people that get education, I can't say all of them, but many people are very inquisitive. And I think that inquisitive goes a long way. So even if someone's, I'll use my father as an example. My father only had an 8th grade education, but he was the most inquisitive person on the earth. So he would meet you, he'd want to know all about you.
Right.
Right? And that would keep him sharp. And then he'd be like, he had a cribbage club once with hundreds of people. And he said, I need to know every name. He needed to know when he walked through the door, and he just made sure he knew everybody's name and kept him sharp. So the sisters that took up new skills as they got older, they seem to have less incidence of Alzheimer's disease.
So new skills is important.
New skills.
Like join a bridge club, learn how to play bridge.
Right.
Or
like
anything
I'm learning guitar.
Oh, you're learning guitar.
I'm learning
okay.
guitar. Last 8 months. That's my new skill.
Am I going to hear you out in a local restaurant someday?
I will tell you this. My instructor tells me that I could probably play for strangers, but I'd have a hard time playing for people I know. I'd like kind of freeze up and stuff. But it's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. But I think it's great because I used to play piano, and it kind of brings it all back.
So you're practicing what you preach. You're learning a new skill.
You got to walk the talk. You
Right.
gotta.
All right. So what else?
What else is important about the nun study? Attitude. The more cheerful sisters, those sunny side sisters, those are the ones that, 2 things. Either they did not develop dementia and Alzheimer's, or 2, they did, but there was something called cognitive reserve. And this is a hallmark of his book. He talks about cognitive reserve because he does the autopsies on these sisters who seem totally fine. had no dementia that he could see on measurement, even when he did the testing. He opens up the brain, there's the plaques and tangles. And he's like, how is that possible?
Now, I'm by nature an optimistic, cheerful person, but what if you're not? Like, I don't know, because I believe cheerful people are just happier and healthier. But I haven't read any studies. But how do you make somebody that sort of has a tendency to be negative and grumpy? I mean, is there a way to change them?
I actually talk to people about that a lot, because as a gerontologist, you know, as we talked before, Lisa, it's so important to consider not just the physiological status of a person, but the emotional status and the socio.
So how do you counsel somebody to be less
You hang out
cranky?
with fun people. You choose your friends wisely.
Because I think bitterness rots the very soul, and I just see a lot of people that are jealous, bitter.
Yes. I think enthusiasm is contagious. I think you attract to yourself what you exude. And so I think if you're a positive person, it brings more positive attributes into your life. And I do think, just like meditation, there's a mindfulness to being optimistic. And gratitude is a huge part of that.
Yeah, when you think about what you have to be thankful for instead of what you don't have.
Every day.
It just changes your whole outlook.
It does.
On the day.
And he would talk about the sisters that were so, you know, positive. And he said, I couldn't believe it. You know, I thought there's no way I'm going to find Alzheimer's in this brain. And then he'd open the brain and he'd see the plaques and tangles, and he goes, remarkable, totally remarkable. But a lot of them were education and sunny dispositions and a little bit more exercise, a little bit more, you know, engaged.
So really also a good club to join would be some sort of exercise club too, like, you know, something where you're learning a new skill, but also some sort of exercise walking club with friends, or hiking club, or rowing club.
The more diverse, the better. I mean, I really believe that that's something, as we get through our lifespan, you know, I don't use the word aging, but as we go through the lifespan, some people tend to gravitate to what they know because there's comfort in there. And we're not so inclined to stretch.
Well, we only have 2 minutes left, so
Gosh, it went so fast.
I know, and you have a lot to say.
I
So
do.
try to be fast, and we can look on your website, and maybe you can come back and we can talk about other things that you didn't get to. But in your few moments, what do you really wish people would walk away from the show?
The takeaway here is you can do it. You can leave a legacy to your family by taking care of yourself. Looking at exercise, the diet that you eat, how you treat yourself and treat others, and maintaining a
Now, so what's your website then, so people can go and just kind of get this?
Right, we'll have more information. It's www.encorefitwell, just like it sounds. And you can check on that. We'll have some hints for you so you can start, and I hope to build a community. I'm going to have like a little contact form. So if you want to be part of this mission that we're on, so
people can put on, like, they want to get a newsletter from you, or get some sort of communication so that it's in their inbox.
Yes.
You have a form for them to fill in, so they can get some of these tips from you.
Yeah.
Well, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much for coming, and I promise I'm going to try to balance myself out of here when I leave.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Lisa Saunders Show, and I hope you do put into practice all that she's told us to do. See you next week.